welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ebony. Thank you so much for being here today. And I thought that I would rank the books that I read in January and February from least to most favorite. So I haven't been reading that much these past 2 months, and it's primarily because I have been busy out of my mind. But with that said, I do have some books to rank for you guys. So I'll start with my least favorite book, which just so happens to be my first DNF of the year, and that was Rouge by Mona Awad. Now, this book had so much promise. I was so excited to read Rouge because I loved All's Well by Mona Awad, and I just thought that it was the perfect blend of fever dream and commentary. I just found Rouge to be a little too unrealistic and a little too suspended in weird reality that it was hard for me to find a connection or some sort of groundedness within the narrator or within the world. I will say Mona Awad knows how to do a strong opening. The beginning of this book was so interesting. It opens up with a young girl and she's begging her mother to tell her the story of Snow White, the fairest of them all. And there's like a cracked mirror. There's a figure that appears in the mirror, kind of like it does for Evil Witch. And it kind of sets the stage for this level of like reflection on what beauty is and kind of like striving to be the most beautiful of them all. However, I found so many things to be wrong with this story. Number one, I felt like it was entirely too long. I think it was about or is about 300 pages. I feel as though this would have been a very, very good short story or a novella, just because it was so repetitive. I felt like Mona Awad was repeating phrases and like instances entirely too much in the story. And I noticed that in All's Well, but it was fine because I felt a connection to the main character and to what she was going through. Whereas with Rouge, it took a while for Mona Awad to like instantly have some sort of like empathetic connection between the reader and Belle, the main character. And Mona Awad like really hits motifs and symbolism over the head, but to the point where like not much deeper understanding can come out of it as a result of. So I was so disappointed by this. I thought it was just me, but then I shared on my Instagram how I DNF'd this book, and so many people either said they wish they would have DNF'd, or like reflecting back on it, it wasn't that impactful, or a lot of people shared that they also did DNF this book. So that sucks, but I know Mona Awad already sold the rights to make it into a film, so I would still be interested to watch the movie because I feel like it would probably work better as a movie. And I got bored around halfway through, so I read half of the book. I DNF'd at around 150 pages, and yeah, it was hard for me to continue reading because I was bored, and I don't really like references to celebrities either in books, which is something that I'm learning about myself. And there is a whole lot of Tom Cruise. So if that's your jam, if that's your thing, you could check out Rouge. I just don't think it worked for me. Some people love it. Some people feel the same way I do about it. But once again, who am I? I'm just a girl. I'm just a woman on the internet with a subjective opinion, okay? The next book I read within January and February was Down the Drain by Julia Fox. I listened to this on audio. And if you don't know, Julia Fox is an actress, an artist, a writer who starred in Uncut Gems. She is also more recently known for having dated Kanye West and being in a relationship with him, which is where I was introduced to Julia Fox, or how I was introduced to her. However, I've kind of started to love her the more I know about her, so that is why I was intrigued to read her memoir. Plus, she has a very complicated, kind of gritty, difficult past, and it was nice to get, you know, more of an insight into that. I listened to this on audiobook, so Julia Fox narrates her own memoir, and this follows her from her time of moving from Italy to New York City, her relationships growing up, the unsteadiness of her household, and the toxic, abusive relationships that she got into as a result of that, whether it be from men she dated or girlfriends that she had. And then ultimately kind of like how she turned to art and creation as a way to either reclaim a part of her story that she lost control of, or to make sense of it. Content warnings are very, very heavy for this book. Drug abuse, drug addiction. So just be aware going into that. But I just love Julia Fox even more after reading this. I think she's been through so much. And yes, it might not be like an all-time favorite or very impactful book that I read in like the grand scheme of things, but I just love something about reading or hearing from someone's life, especially in the form of a audiobook, because it feels like the person is telling me their story. It feels very intimate, as opposed to if I had just read it on my own. I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it. Also, fun fact, Julia Fox is an Aquarius. We actually shared the same birthday. So I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is very Aquarius coded, just the way that she thought about certain things. And then I was like, oh, makes sense. I found out she was born the same day that I was. So, you know, that could make me a little biased as well, but I still loved it. So I would recommend you check it out if you have kind of been interested in Julia Fox, how she rose to fame. She's kind of quirky, a little unorthodox in her decisions. And yeah, I love that about her. So I would recommend this. Once again, I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. So not bad. I went from a DNF to a 4 out of 5 star read. The next book I read was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Also listened to this on audio. And this is my first R.F. Kuang book, but it will not be my last. Okay, I'm not really a fantasy girly, so I couldn't get into the Poppy War, or at least not yet. I wasn't as drawn to read it as I was Yellowface. Yellowface is also a very buzzy book, and I loved it. I think I rated it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And Yellowface follows the story of a white narrator who adopts the name of Juniper, and she is best friends, kind of loosely friends, with a Asian literary darling who amassed a lot of success. They both went to Yale, and it's kind of like following these two timelines of Juniper or June, and then her best friend, who is nominated to win a Pulitzer, to win a National Book Award for her first book. And then like June is just kind of trying to get published. She's being very unsuccessful. And R.F. Kuang creates a very interesting premise because they're both eating together one day. Shortly afterwards, our friend dies. And so Juniper comes across a manuscript that's unreleased, and she steals that manuscript and publishes it underneath her own name, and kind of gets that same critical acclaimed success, the money, everything that she's kind of been wanting. And she is convincing us the entire time that it is a bit of a collaboration because she edited the book and kind of reworked it to be a better story. We all know that's not true, and it's so unethical because her friend died. And so you just cringe so much throughout this story. Also, as a person of color, a writer of color, I felt like, oh my God, I could 1000% see how this idea of publishers really favoring diverse stories at the moment. And like, it was just such a satire that had me chuckling, had me cringing, had me angry. It was so good. And also, I was sad the entire time. The story flows so well. The pacing is great. I never once felt bored with the story. Yes, it was kind of predictable, and the narrator is unreliable, but in a way, especially as a person of color, you already know how this is going to work out. If you know, you know, but also it's a good mirror too for other people to read. I felt like R.F. Kuang definitely is writing from some sort of personal experience with like the co-opting of stories and who has the right to tell whose stories. So yeah, I definitely recommend that you check out Yellowface. It was so good. 1000% worth the hype. Such a fast pace, loved it on audio, and I would 1000% recommend. And the last book that I read or listened to is Wild and Precious. This is a celebration of the life of Mary Oliver, narrated by Sophia Bush, but has appearances from people like Rainn Wilson, who starred as Dwight in The Office, one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, as well as Samin, who is a renowned chef, and Mary Oliver's students, neighbors. This was truly so beautiful because it is basically a eulogy, and also Ross Gay is in here as well, the author of the Book of Delights and Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. But this was such a beautiful eulogy to the life, the work of Mary Oliver. This was all about how these famous artists, famous creatives, as well as people that maybe we might not have heard of, have been impacted by Mary Oliver's work or even a personal relationship. And it was so beautiful. I cried a few times while listening to this, and the format of audiobook just works so well with this because it feels like you're listening to personal interviews, and it was so beautiful. Just a celebration of the way in which Mary Oliver captured everything about our existence and nature. And we even got to hear some of Mary Oliver's narrated poems from herself. So she read some of her work in this, or they used clips, of course, because this is after she passed away. Just a beautiful audiobook that I will probably revisit 1,000 times in my life. And it's the perfect read for going into spring because it's all about the transitional periods of our life, going from winter, like death and coldness, and then into light and growth. It was so beautiful. I cannot stop gushing about it. I just would like to say I'm a diehard Mary Oliver fan. Like, if you have been here for a while, you probably already know that. Don't go in expecting it to only be Mary Oliver. It's not that at all. Think of it once again as like a eulogy to her life and to her work, from the perspective of other people. But once again, they shared such intimate, thoughtful, insightful insecurities, struggles, mental health struggles. It was just like so good. Those are all of the books that I've finished reading. However, I am in the middle of 2 books that I just kind of want to share my thoughts on because I've been reading them for a while. I don't know what's taking me so long this year to read books, but it's all good. Read at your own pace. I want to be more slow in my reading and just take time with books and analyze and just ruminate on them. So that is especially true for Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector. I don't think I've ever read anything like this before, and sometimes it's hard to follow because it's so profound, and she's making all of these stunning connections between so many different things in life and in birth and in creation and the fleetingness of it all. It's very existential. But yeah, I am currently on page 30, but I've loved so much of this. I have so many notes, and something that I think is really good is she talks about why she's writing. All that I write you is taught. I use stray words that are in themselves a free dart. Savages, barbarians, decadent, noblemen, and gangsters. Does that mean anything to you? It speaks to me. And then she goes on, but the most important word in the language has but 2 letters, is. I am at its core. I still am. I am at the living and soft center still. I write to you because I don't understand myself. This is like me in a book. I love this, but it's a book that I want to take my time with. It's something that I want to read when I'm in the right headspace to read, and I can absorb everything and appreciate it. So that's why I'm taking my time with Agua Viva. And then Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid. I've spoken about this book a few times already across my platforms like TikTok and on YouTube. I'm loving this story. Coming of age. Annie John is a young girl. She is in adolescence, but we meet her just before adolescence, with that like innocent of, oh wait, I don't understand, like people die, and she has this revelation, and then she experiences changes in her body. She falls in love with the schoolgirl who she's currently attending school with, and she wants to be a writer, and she writes beautifully. But most importantly, this is about how her relationship with her mother is changing as she changes, and as her views of the world change. And yeah, it's so beautiful. I think often of the line where her mother says to her, you cannot just go around looking like a little me or like a shadow of me your entire life. And that is where the revelation lies for within Annie John. 2 books I've been reading and loving. But yes, ultimately that is it. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know your favorite read so far this year, maybe a least favorite read. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.